Hi, welcome to another episode of the Mayor's Table. Here with Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett, and with me today is our new Farmington Economic Development Director, Warren Unsicker. Warren, thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
So Warren was hired by the City of Farmington really beginning of 2019 as a part of our community transformation economic diversification efforts, which the council voted for last year. So just to give somebody an idea quickly of why you're here,
Right.
because we didn't have an economic development department per se prior to 2019.
Absolutely.
So in the past, the City of Farmington, along with the other entities like San Juan County, had put money into Four Corners Economic Development for kind of a regional approach to economic development in San Juan County, kind of the SJSCI type child of, so to speak. But one of the issues that we faced in those efforts is a lack of funding. And economic development is something that, unfortunately, it costs money. If you're going to incentivize businesses to move here, if you're going to incentivize businesses that are here to stay here, to retain, to really have that strategy come to full fruition, you're going to have some funding behind it. And of course, the Farmington City Council voted unanimously last year for a 0.25% tax directly related to economic diversification, something that I believe every citizen that I've spoken to over the last 5 years has repeated to me. How do we move beyond oil and gas and coal? Well, now of course we're in a situation where we're being forced to move on in some ways from some of these things, and the need to be imaginative, the need to bring on an expert like yourself into the fold of the city to provide us some direction became more and more apparent now than ever before. Unfortunately, I think we're probably 10 years or 15 years behind from where we needed to be at this point, but hey, there's no better time to start than now. So Warren, I'm glad you joined us to at least give our viewers an update, an idea of kind of what you see economic diversification being in Farmington, different things that we're working on, that you're working on to help promote this area, to attract businesses, to retain jobs, those kind of things. So
Absolutely.
Again, thanks for being here.
No, thank you.
So when we look at the idea of retention and growth and recruitment, I mean, in your mind, how do these things fit in with where we're at right now as a city?
Sure. No, and I mean, the monumental effort that went into the plant was a prime example of business retention. You know, that retention expansion piece is crucial to an area like ours that does have somewhat of a primary base that we pull from. And so energy is always going to be a part of the landscape. It's just going to shift and change over time right now. But that becomes one of the major drivers because you look at things like Raytheon and Pesco, who have expanded quite a bit over the last 3 to 4 years, actually, adding hundreds of jobs to this area. And those are things that, you know, especially both Raytheon and Pesco took on LEDA incentives through their processes and JTIP, or Job Training Incentive Funds.
I was going to say, be careful of the acronyms here.
Acronym City and Economic Development, folks. Sorry about that.
So LEDA is what?
It's the state's closing fund, essentially. And so this is for major projects. You've seen Facebooks, the Raytheons, the Keter Plastics, and various different other things. Netflix, yeah. Those are the closing fund that the governor and the state have purview over to try and attract major businesses that, if but for having that mechanism, that would have been harder or not possible to attract them to our region. So.
And there are obviously strings tied to that money.
Absolutely.
LEDA can't just be given to any business that's coming in. So,
precisely.
You know, one of the things we deal with a lot here in the city is we're a retail hub, and so there's opportunities for other retailers to grow or to move here, and they're looking for deals as well.
Sure.
And unfortunately, when it comes to LEDA funds, they do not qualify unless they're in a special district.
Right, and so that's where the MRA becomes a huge asset to us, but outside of those boundaries, you know, LEDA has stipulations on the types of industry sectors and the size and the amount that they export out of the area. So 51% of their product needs to be being sold outside of New Mexico, which is a good thing. Yeah. That is something that draws more revenue outside the state instead of just shuffling around within the state.
Sure.
So it's a benefit to the region, and those are base jobs, as they call them. They're bringing more from the outside in.
And certainly, I think as we see what the direction and LEDA is set up, literally, it just shows you the roadmap of what the state wants to spend money on and invest in.
Right.
And trying to align ourselves with that, I think, is critical because we want to take advantage of those monies.
Absolutely.
So ORI is one of those programs, the initiative that we're trying to work on to attract manufacturing.
Absolutely.
Maybe you could speak to some of those
Yeah,
things.
absolutely. So the Outdoor Recreation Industry Initiative, in my opinion, is kind of the keynote item that is in the city's kind of toolbox at this point, and one of the biggest low-hanging fruits that we have for this region. And so with all the outdoor assets that we have within a very short distance, it's, to me, kind of a no-brainer to attract businesses that are in that sphere, whether they're the outfitters and guides or they're the people manufacturing the goods and the services that you use when you're out biking, hiking, taking your OHV out. All those things require parts and helmets and
Right.
coats. I mean, textiles, foods. I mean, the gamut is wide. And so that becomes something that we can capitalize on and value add to some of the raw product that we have here. One being just the great outdoors in general, but two being things like agricultural goods, the low cost of manufacturing here, all the skills that we have here from a manufacturing perspective. There's a lot of opportunity even with our existing businesses to diversify their product lines. I'm actually going to be speaking with one later this week, hopefully to talk about some of the diversification they've already done into that realm.
Right.
And so that becomes, I think, crucial to us as we're trying to attract manufacturing in a realm that is diversified and new and maybe insulated from the energy ebbs and flows that we have.
No, great point.
And so likewise, we're going to be doing some outside recruiting on that front. If you want to speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, we're going to be taking a trip here, kind of the field trip to share the news is what I'd like to say, kind of get our face really out there in front of the Outdoor Recreation Industry Association, who's hosting their annual outdoor retailer show in Denver, Colorado, coming up this summer. And many of you may recall that there's been an article that was written about the city of Farmington, and one of the quotes they put in there is that we're the next Moab. Yeah. And so this is exactly the kind of venue we want to be at, and we want to be telling people, hey, here's what we have to offer. This is why they said we're the next Moab, and why don't you come down here and help us grow into that? So I'm excited about those opportunities.
Absolutely.
What I think is great, Warren, with you is obviously you were the director of economic development at Four Corners Economic Development prior to coming over to the city of Farmington, but you also have experience in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and in Alaska, if I recall correctly, or you were raised in Alaska?
Yeah, raised in Alaska.
Okay.
So I've bounced around a lot of oil and gas and energy-related industry areas and between Oklahoma and Alaska and here, so yeah.
So you have a good background in that. And I want to make sure we mention the fact that you were awarded the 40 Under 40 award for economic development for directors in that realm. So just make sure we tell our listeners the good news. So I agree. I think we've talked here as a city that outdoor recreation is a critical component of it. Obviously, we have spent money in the metropolitan redevelopment area, seeing as downtown as a driver of economics for our city. We're looking obviously in that realm because we have a little bit more leeway to work with companies for businesses to relocate to the Animas Civic Center and downtown districts. And just simply, the amount of money that has gone into the Civic Center, the amount of money that's going to go into the redevelopment of the Main Street, those things are going to lend into that. The other thing, though, when we talk about manufacturing, we always have to talk about the fact that transportation is a critical component of any business who's going to come in and manufacture. Is how do I get my products out of there and my supplies in at the lowest cost possible?
Absolutely.
And of course, we sit in northwest New Mexico, which for me is just like the transportation black hole to some degree. When you look at the map of the state and you see crisscrossing railroads, and then you see this just gigantic hole where there's no rail at all. And rail's not the end-all, be-all. But certainly interstate's a good thing to have. Sure. And airport's a good thing to have. And we've obviously been working diligently in regards to meeting the FAA requirements to get our airport, the runway, to a standard where they feel like they can fly jet service in here. So, but talk to us a little bit about this idea of a road train. And maybe this is a new thing for folks who are paying attention out there.
Sure.
To give an idea, what is a road train?
Sure, and this is something that we kind of kicked around since I've gotten here as an alternative to rail. If it becomes too far out the scope of reality, the alternative may be creating a more efficient way of transporting tractor trailers from here to their end destination at a rail spur. And so in Australia, they actually have road trains to kind of solve a similar problem, which is they have mines out in the outback that are way out in the middle of nowhere, and they don't necessarily want to build, major interstates in and out of those mines. So they build, heavy haul corridors essentially that are not necessarily up to, highway spec, and they do longer tractor trails. They have one big rig and 5, 6, 8, 10 trailers behind that one rig.
Right.
And basically, far more efficient, one driver as opposed to 5 or 6, and you are able to haul more load essentially in one trip. And so there's a potential that we might be able to come up with some kind of a similar concept here to try and get our goods out of the area. The other option there is too, there's kind of a new digital way of doing that with the new technologies around automated vehicles to basically tether several rigs together wirelessly to where you have a lead rig being driven by a person and then you have basically drone rigs following them. And so there's a lot of different options out there that we could look at and ways to try and expand and maximize our capability of getting products and goods out of the area.
I think it's an interesting time because I mentioned this to you earlier, it almost seems in some ways we're trying to recreate the wheel. But we're at a point, I think, where the technology exists there that's maybe not being implemented everywhere at this time, where there is an opportunity for it to be implemented here. Obviously, a road train may not necessarily be a new thing, but it would be new to anywhere that I've been in America. And same thing with the alternative, the digital solution there. But the point is there is opportunities. And we need to be taking advantage of them, especially those that are cost efficient. In regards to other areas that you're focused on, what are some things that the people here could kind of key into?
Well, and it kind of tying in with the rail piece and the road train is petrochemical manufacturing. It's something that is going to need some major distribution capabilities, but we have the raw feedstock for something like that. We have natural gas in abundance, and it's very low cost and high grade natural gas that lends itself well to producing petrochemical products. So the polyethylene pellets that you use to produce
everything.
Clothes, outdoor
Amazing.
rec goods,
Yeah,
medical pieces, all the different pieces of the puzzle, this is the feedstock. And so we can provide those types of companies with lower cost raw material, low instances of natural disaster. You look at all of the petrochemical manufacturing facilities down in Houston that get just lambasted on a regular basis.
Hurricanes.
Every
flooding.
every type of natural disaster you can think of down there. And so we're well situated from that perspective. But the one thing we will need is more logistical capability. But that's something that attracting that type of business could even lend itself to attracting rail in conjunction with. And so there's a lot of opportunity, and these are multi-billion with a B dollar facilities with hundreds of jobs that would come along with them and would really fit well with the current landscape that we have here and the current skill sets that we have in this area. So.
Well, I think that's something we have to take advantage of. And a lot of the decisions that have been made here over the last few years have dealt with what are some of the low-hanging fruit that we should be capitalizing on, where maybe that infrastructure, those assets already exist. And we're seeing some of those ideas too in regards to San Juan Generating Station, of which we don't necessarily know the complete future of, but there is ideas of how to repurpose that facility. And one of the main reasons is all the transmission lines that flow out of there, where 7 states are served by those transmission lines. And wouldn't it be in our best interest to try and find organizations who'd like to come in and create power or backup power or whatever it is, and utilize that facility and those transmission lines as they exist today. But I think it's important for our viewers to understand we don't simply want to use the CTED fund to go out and just build things. Right? We want to build things with purpose. We want to make it public-private partnerships. So that some of the things that we're doing, it may be in beautification, or if we're looking at a park that for the simple fact that I'll use Gateway Park as an example. Gateway Park is really the closest point up from Main Street where you can access the river. And wouldn't it be in our best interest to highlight that type of amenity for how important outdoor recreation and just the outdoor area that the Four Corners represents to all of us, to be able to show our visitors, people that are coming in from out of town, doctors we're recruiting, professionals we're recruiting, whoever, to say this is a critical component, it's a part of our quality of life. But there has to be the other projects, so we're really trying to get a return on investment.
Right.
And jobs is a component of that. And that's where I see the opportunity with petrochemical, and I know that's something that you've been working with. Also the manufacturing component for Ori. Is there other ones that you've had on your radar?
Yeah, and again, it kind of ties back to Ori, but it's separate from is the agricultural piece. We have a lot of raw product in the agricultural realm in this area. And a lot of what you'll hear from what I'm talking about is utilizing our raw materials and value adding to them. Because right now, that's money left on the table. We're exporting raw product, which usually costs more because it's usually heavier and more bulky and such, and refining it down to its end use. And that creates jobs, and it also maximizes that raw product into something that can get more profit for this area. And so with the agricultural piece too, a lot of these outdoor recreation businesses that we ran into at this show that we mentioned, the outdoor retailer show, they need raw product for their bars,
they need pumpkins, they need pumpkin seeds,
there you go. Yeah, exactly. Corn, make chips and things. There's all these things that you can be utilizing to make those end products, and so the value add process becomes critical. And so that's something else we are looking at as well, is the agricultural value added processing. So
I think it's important for people to know too. We're scratching the surface on a lot of these things because again, we've not had to really invest money and time into exploring new business opportunities in the Four Corners area because we were all being paid by oil, gas, and coal. That's just the reality of it. But there's so much more to offer here, and that's kind of the point. Absolutely. And if we use this segment as an opportunity to tell our public that these opportunities exist, and if you're involved in agriculture, if you'd like to learn more about ways you can get involved in areas in industry maybe you have expertise in that you see an opportunity, Warren Unsicker is the guy to contact here at the City of Farmington, and set up those meetings, and let's start talking about maybe some things that haven't come out of the woodwork yet. Yeah. But in different things that I read, and we talk about communities that are in transition, it usually starts out with those small core grass groups within the community, where those passionate people with whatever it is, they kind of come to the forefront, they organize, they get things set up, and then they start pushing. But it takes sustainability to get really pushed over that mountain, which means it takes people who are getting involved up front, on the back side, and filling in the middle as we transition and move up. So I'm glad you're here, Warren. I'm happy to have your type of expertise here at the City of Farmington.
Very pleased to be here.
And there's a lot more, obviously, we could talk about when it comes to economic development. Is there anything you'd like to leave the viewers with today?
Just like you mentioned, we need you to help start businesses, think outside the box, expand your business lines into new realms, and we're happy to offer advice, resources, and take full advantage of all the resources we do have here. You look at the Quality Center for Business that just launched its maker space, has incubation space. If you have a notion in your head of a business you want to start, there are so many free or low-cost resources there at the Quality Center for Business you should be taking advantage of. And then once you're ready to go and spread your wings and fly, we can help with finding space and helping potentially even with incentives depending on the type of business it is and those kinds of things. There's just no shortage of resources, so take full advantage of them. Even downtown, they host these Farmington Downtown Resiliency Program that they put on. That's open to everyone, and these are great classes on how to market your business, on how to grow your business, how to make it stronger. And if more and every business in this community did that, we'd be that much better for it. So.
Now, there's no lack of resources and expertise. I believe inside the City of Farmington. There are so many places you could go, and great to bring up the Business Resiliency Project is even the Farmington Police Department's being involved in that and trying to help business owners understand how to better merchandise their products and dealing with theft and those kind of things. So, and that's public dollars being put to work for the public,
right?
Which I definitely think is important for us to do. So we're invested in this, we're invested in you, we're invested in your business. We want to see you grow, see it grow, see you bring new people here. It's challenging, there's no doubt about it. But if you, on the forefront of decision making, you are sitting down with people who understand the system and understand where the money exists that can help you, that's going to help you lay out your roadmap a lot better than going at it yourself and then having to circle back around after you've run into some roadblocks. So definitely take advantage of all the resources available here inside the City of Farmington. Warren, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to having you back on.
Thank
and thank you for your viewership. Please, if you have ideas and things you'd like us to talk about here on the Mayor's Table, you can reach out to me at nduckett@fmtn.org. We appreciate you tuning in today, and we'll see you in a couple weeks with more information on things happening right here inside the city of Farmington.